No man did this. Evil is on board. Powerful evil.
So the question is, like, where did this movie go wrong? It's not as harsh as Rotten Tomatoes has made it out to be, but I really do think the culture of cinema has changed.
This thing has killed most of the crew.
Then imagine what it will do if we let it get to London.
Hi friends, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Watched by Ashley. If you're new here, this is where I take a look at some of the new releases on streaming and video on demand and discuss whether or not they're worth the watch. Today we're going to be taking a look at the second Dracula movie of 2023, and that is The Last Voyage of the Demeter. So Universal has, for some reason, like I said, released two Dracula movies this year, and they're very contrasting. So the other movie was Renfield earlier in the year, and that starred Nicolas Cage as Dracula. I would say it was more comedic, and his Dracula looked a lot more like Christopher Lee in the 1958 film for Dracula. But this Dracula for The Last Voyage of Demeter is a lot more menacing and mysterious. It is pretty hard to spoil this movie when you consider the fact that it's based off of Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1897. And what it really focuses on is Dracula's voyage from Transylvania to London. And it's really just like 10 pages in the original work, but here, like, these characters that were footnotes are actually given a feature-length film. And I do think that is creative in the fact that we're kind of like backfilling or adding to the story here in an interesting way. I love vampire movies. Like, that's something that I'm fascinated with, and not because of Twilight or the idea of some handsome man wanting to suck your blood. No, I just like the idea that this vampires originate from folklore that's based on the idea that, like, your loved ones come back from the dead. Just because, like, if you look at a coffin after somebody's been buried, you would assume that their hair and their nails are growing, just because in reality the skin around your hair and nails end up shrinking, so it looks like it's longer. And so people just, like, were spooked and they thought, oh my gosh, this person's still alive. Or sometimes people were buried alive, and, you know, it's these little things that back then they didn't have the knowledge to understand what was going on, but they assumed, like, oh, they're undead. Or, like, if you're in New Orleans, you would assume that people are leaving their coffins just because if you were buried in a shallow grave and the water levels raised too high, people would end up getting dislodged from their coffins and the coffins would be empty, and it caused mass hysteria. And so I just find it so amazing that, you know, someone like Bram Stoker, for example, was able to make a character like Dracula and tell such a fascinating story based off of these myths and legends that we've created as a society. I really do think the story of Dracula, the character of Dracula, like, it's so rich. There's been so many different iterations of the character. There's been times where Dracula has been based off of Vlad the Impaler, or you have stories where Dracula is Judas. There's just so many different directions that you can go into, so much you can build off of with this character. But for some reason, Universal Studios cannot get it right. They put a budget of $45 million into this movie, and it hasn't even brought in $20 million at the time of recording this video. I think the director, André Øvredal, did a really good job. Like, I can't really take anything away from the directing here. It's pretty solid, especially for, like, the type of movie that it is. It's like a horror. It's a horror vampire movie, and there really is only so much you can do, in a sense. It's kind of like checking the boxes off, but it is really well done. Not any big names, like, there aren't any superstars in this movie, and that's typically the case for, like, horror thriller films. Like, you don't have big celebrities in them, but I think the cast overall does a really good job of keeping you entertained and getting you emotionally invested. It is a shame that this movie hasn't performed well in theaters, but I think that's just a sign of the times. Like, I think this movie would have done really well maybe like 15-20 years ago, because the culture of cinema is totally different. Like, if you'd gone to a theater with a movie in mind and for whatever reason the timings didn't work out, you always had like a B plan, a plan B movie. And I think this movie is like a plan B film for cinemas. Like, it's not necessarily on the top of your list, but it is a solid watch. And with that being said, I think now the direction is that, like, some of these movies really are meant for streaming, because this is totally a movie you can get behind on, like, a Friday night with a friend and curl up with some popcorn. You'll definitely be entertained. Overall, my rating for the film is 6.5 out of 10. Like, I feel like 7 is too high, while 6 might be too low, so I think 6.5 is a sweet spot. Although it is a solid movie, like I said, there are some glaring flaws to the film, and I do want to get into it a bit more detail, so spoilers going forward, in case you don't want to have the movie spoiled for you. So let's get into it. I'm going to start off a bit negative and then go to the positive at the end, so bear with me. So the first and most glaring flaw to this movie, I think, is the fact that the studio really wants to launch an IP off of Dracula. The way they ended the movie, like the last 3 minutes of the movie were really disappointing because without really properly wrapping up the ending of the movie, they've kind of set it up that they could expand more on this character. And I thought that was really unfortunate because it really cheapened the overall film. Like, yes, I already know that Dracula is going to cause mayhem in London, but you didn't really need to start like this whole idea of Clemens kind of becoming like a Van Helsing and trying to hunt Dracula down.
I will pursue this foul beast, and I swear by those who have given their lives that I will extinguish this blight and send it back to hell.
I felt like the movie suffered for that, and it just really left a bad taste in my mouth for the movie. And it really, like I said, I love vampire movies, so I was just really disappointed to feel that way at the end of the movie. Another aspect of the film that I felt like was a bit strange was they have Captain Elliot, who's played by Liam Cunningham, and Liam Cunningham does a fantastic performance here. I thought he was really stellar. And it's not his fault, it's the way the script is. Like, it's just that Elliot makes it known that this is going to be his last voyage.
I've decided this is to be my final voyage, Mr. Wojciech.
He intends on retiring because he has his grandson on the ship with him and he just wants a better life for him. But I just found that for a captain, Elliot really lets his ship fall apart. Like, he doesn't take any action in terms of the things that are going on. It's just, he lets it happen to him. There's no proactive approach at all here. I really scratched my head because when you're the captain, the buck stops with you. If cattle are dying on the ship or people are getting murdered, like, you should be really taking charge and trying to get to the bottom of it. Like, he didn't really search the whole ship to find out what was going on, and I thought that was a bit strange and disappointing. Another aspect of the film that didn't really work for me is, although I thought that Corey Hawkins did a decent job as Dr. Clemens, I really questioned for the time period if it was necessary to make Clemens a person of color. And the reason why I say that is because it took away from the character in the sense that the most interesting thing about him was his skin tone.
Finally, I was offered a position by post. Royal physician to King Carol I of Romania. My name, it reached them somehow, but the colour of my skin, it would later seem, had not.
And I don't think originally the way the story was told that Clemens was black. And I know that they wanted to have diversity in the cast here, but to me, like, Clemens' major hang-up is his race. And I don't really think that suits the story because it's not what the story is about. Like, it didn't need to put race politics into it. So I don't think it enhanced the film. So switching gears here, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I really did like and I thought were positive for the movie. I did like the fact that it was a different approach to Dracula, right? It's not like Gary Oldman's Dracula performance. Like, this isn't a handsome, dashing fellow who's going to seduce you so he could suck your blood. Like, no, instead we get a very terrible, menacing, scary man-bat who's like terrorizing the ship by night. Slowly, as he's feeding on everybody, he's becoming more and more like a man. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a really good choice to do in that way. They didn't really need to do too much CGI in certain scenes, which I thought was really good. It was a shadowy figure in someone's line of sight that kind of gives them like the spooks. Another aspect of the film I thought was great was just the way they built the tension. So when you start on the voyage, you have the crew for the ship that they're all different. Like, they have different backgrounds in terms of geographically or religiously, or even in terms of their morals, because one of the defining points is the fact that Dracula skillfully put in place, if they managed to get his cargo to London without stopping, that they would get a bonus. So due to the crew's greed, no one decides to stop the ship even though things are falling apart. Like, they should have stopped the ship multiple times, but they all wanted to get that bonus. From a moral standpoint, a lot of this could have been avoided if they'd taken that stop. And I just like the fact that you have all these different personalities and feelings and thoughts, and everyone is kind of like skeptical of everyone else on the ship. And you can see, like, as things are falling apart, the accusations start flying.
Punishment brought down for our sins. Petrovsky, a criminal. Bulgarian, gypsy, heathen. A whoremonger, a lecher.
Another part that I liked is just the fact that even though this is a journey taking place overseas, it felt like a space kind of movie. And the fact that, like, sometimes you have those stories where the crew is flying on a mission and then there's like an alien or an intruder on the ship slowly attacking them one by one. It definitely had that feeling here in this movie, and I thought that was, again, really well executed. Like I said, I did find the movie to be enjoyable. I just found it really hard to give it a higher rating simply because the ending was just so jarring. Like, I really struggle to understand why the studio did that, because there's only so much you could do with Clemens and Dracula now that they're in London. Like, we all know Dracula is going to have the upper hand, and Clemens doesn't really strike me as a Van Helsing type of character. What would have been really cool, I think maybe what they could have done is have Dracula like in a bar and Van Helsing's like on his trail or something. That would have been pretty neat. But again, I think they really squandered their opportunities here. I mean, we'll see if this movie becomes really popular on streaming and ends up having a cult following. Maybe it'll get some more traction for a possible sequel, but they dropped the ball here, unfortunately. If you're looking for some similar recommendations to The Last Voyage of the Demeter, on Netflix there are a few good ones that I would suggest. So there is the Dracula television show from 2020. I thought that was pretty solid, a nice kind of look into that character. It's a bit more gothic if that's your thing. Another great Netflix show is Midnight Mass. I really loved that show. I thought it was so creative, especially for a modern vampire story. I loved it. I really think you check it out around Halloween. It's awesome. Another great Netflix addition would be Castlevania. I think that's Netflix's strongest anime kind of style show. I really enjoyed that story there. It's with Dracula and his son Alucard. Awesome. So those are my recommendations there. That's everything I have in regards to The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Please let me know if you've seen the film. Did you enjoy it? Do you like vampire movies? If you do, please let me know what your favorite one is. I'd like to know if I've watched it, and if I haven't, I'll check it out. But that's all I have for you today, so thanks so much for watching and spending time with me. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the content here, please hit that like button. And if you really enjoyed it, hit subscribe so you can see what else I've been up to. But until next time, take care, and I'll see you later. Bye.